My name is Heather. I was 26 when my mom told me I should be proud of how stable I'd become, as if that was something you praised in a utility pole. I thought betrayal had to be loud to count, but in my family, it always came softly, behind a smile. That spring Saturday, I showed up like I always did. Our parents' yard looked polished enough for a photo shoot. Mom had swapped out all the patio cushions for pale cream linen, completely impractical, but soothing, she said. Of course, that was Kristen's word. She used it for everything: her diffuser blends, her Instagram captions, even her career plans. I'd picked up lemon scones from my favorite bakery on the way. It was a tiny thing, but thoughtful. Nobody touched them. Kristen was already there, curled up barefoot on the white love seat, looking like she'd wandered out of a luxury spa commercial. Dad handed her a sweetened iced coffee, just the way she liked it. I got an unsweetened one with a slice of lemon floating sadly on top. Just how you like it, he said. I didn't bother correcting him. No one had said what we were even gathering for. Just a casual catch-up, Mom had texted, but the tone didn't feel casual. There was a hum beneath the words, like everyone had been briefed except me. Kristen talked about needing space to breathe and a sanctuary that vibrates at my frequency. Mom nodded with reverence, like she was listening to a TED Talk, not her daughter brainstorming another apartment upgrade. When I asked how Grandma was doing, Mom gave a vague, "She's fine," and added that Kristen had been checking in. That stung more than I admitted. I used to call Grandma every week. I used to be the one who remembered her eye drops, her crossword subscriptions, her birthday, not Kristen. But that wasn't worth mentioning anymore. After lunch, while Kristen went inside to set up her diffuser, Mom pulled me aside near the side gate. She placed a hand on my shoulder like she was awarding a medal. "You've been so steady lately," she said. "It's such a gift. We're really proud of how grounded you are." That was it. No question about the grant I was shortlisted for. No mention of my work. Just grounded. Like a tree, like furniture. On the drive back to my apartment, I tried to reason through it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe they were distracted. But even in the quiet hum of the freeway, something vibrated under my skin. Something sour. When I opened my fridge later that night, the paper bag with the untouched lemon scones was still there. Still sealed, still cold, still mine. I stared at the sink for a long time, glass of water in hand. Not angry. Not yet, but something had shifted. The next time I went to the house, it was midweek. Kristen had left a voice note, vague peppy, asking if I could pick up a folder she'd forgotten in the den. Mom was out. Dad had back-to-back Zooms. I was told to grab a snack if I wanted. I hadn't been inside alone in months. The house smelled like lavender and citrus oil. The hallway rug was new, palest gray, like it belonged in a hotel. The photo wall had been rearranged. My graduation portrait had been moved to the end of the row, partly obscured by a shadow from the staircase light. In the den, the folder wasn't on the desk or the chair. I checked the side table, and that's when I saw it. A white ceramic mug, gold initials, a tiny chip at the rim. Kristen's. She never brought that mug here. She used to say the kitchen was too chaotic for her energy. But now there it was, rinsed, dried, cabinet ready. I walked to the kitchen, top shelf, third row. Two of her mugs lined up next to the handmade bowls I once gave Mom for her birthday. Bowls she said were too fragile for daily use. The mail on the counter, addressed to R. Moore, Kristen's business name. A promo packet for event hosting. Opened, not trashed. I found the folder eventually, stuffed inside a canvas tote hanging on the coat rack. Not in the den, not even nearby. On the way out, I stopped by the piano. There was a new photo in a silver frame. Kristen in a sun hat, laughing. Beside it, a quote card. "Alignment is love in motion." KM. She was quoting herself. I locked the door behind me. In my car, I sat for a long time. The folder was on my lap. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The folder was still unopened on my passenger seat when I pulled into the office parking structure Monday morning. I could have dropped it off at Kristen's co-working space downtown, but I didn't. Instead, I waited. I wanted to see her face when I handed it over. But Kristen didn't follow up. No call, no text, just silence. By Thursday, I got a text from Mom. "Hey honey, wanna come by Saturday? Just the two of us. Thought we could catch up." I hesitated, then said yes. Saturday came cloudy and windless, the kind of still air that made every movement feel like an interruption. I parked down the block, my tires crunching over loose gravel, and walked up to the house. Inside, the kitchen smelled like oat milk lattes and floor polish. Mom already had two mugs ready, hers topped with foam art, mine black and plain. No scones, no pastries, just conversation. We sat at the kitchen island, legs crossed, mugs in hand. I waited for the warmth to come. It didn't. So, I began gently, Kristen's mail is coming here now? Mom blinked, then smiled as if I'd pointed out a smudge on her glasses. Oh, just for the time being, she said breezily. It's easier for her to receive things here. Her building doesn't have secure delivery. That wasn't true. I'd visited her space once. It had a digital access system, a front desk, even package lockers. She's here a lot then? Well, helping out, organizing. She's got such an eye for. Mom stopped short, stirred her drink. For calming things down, she finished. The air between us felt suddenly brittle. I leaned forward. Is Kristen living here again? A pause. Not exactly, Mom said. She just spends time here, recharges. You know how she is. I didn't, actually. She's helped rearrange some things, Mom added. Suggested some layout tweaks, brought in some new pieces. She moved my graduation photo. Mom looked confused. What? It's not next to hers anymore. It's halfway down the staircase, almost hidden. She went quiet, tapped her fingernail on the side of her cup. Oh, I hadn't noticed. That was the moment something cracked. Because my mother noticed everything. She noticed unwatered houseplants, misaligned table settings, the precise pitch of a sneeze that might mean a cold. She noticed, but not this. I pushed a little harder. Why is Kristen's mug in the kitchen cabinet? Heather, please, she sighed. You're overthinking. She left it here once. I put it away. It's not a big deal. But it was, not because of the mug, because of the pattern. Because I remembered Mom once throwing out a favorite travel thermos I'd left behind during finals week. She said clutter made her feel closed in. She donated it the same day, but Kristen's chipped ceramic piece, complete with initials, had been washed, dried, and shelved. Something inside me twisted. I just don't understand what's happening, I said penally. You don't have to, she said quietly. You're steady, you always have been. The words landed cold. We finished our coffee in silence. I left the folder on the island and drove away without saying goodbye. At a red light, I pulled over. The air felt too tight in my chest. I scrolled through my photos, something I hadn't done in weeks. I searched for the old staircase picture from 4 years ago, both our graduation photos side by side. Mine in blue, hers in white, equal height, equal frame. Then I opened the one I'd snapped last week, almost without thinking. Mine now half-shadowed, tilted, hers bright, dead center. There was even a tiny vase of dried lavender beneath it. Presentation, placement, priority. I sat with that thought the rest of the day. It followed me into sleep. It started with a forgotten scarf. That was the excuse I gave myself for showing up unannounced. Tuesday afternoon, I left work early. Told my team I had a headache, but the only thing throbbing was that thought. Kristen's presence in the house like perfume that lingered long after she left. I parked on the corner away from the front window. I didn't text, didn't knock. Mom's car wasn't there. Dad's probably still at the office. The house looked still, curtains gently breathing in the breeze. I let myself in with the old key I still kept on my chain. The second I stepped inside, I could feel it, her energy. It was in the diffuser mist curling from the console table in the front hall, some blend labeled Clarity on a matte glass bottle. It was in the folded throw blanket draped across the arm of the couch, chunky knit, pale lilac. It wasn't Mom's taste. It wasn't anyone's taste except Kristen's. I made my way to the hallway where the family portraits hung. My own smile in that old graduation frame felt brittle now. The glass catching glare just enough to blur my face while Kristen's glowed beside it. Balanced? Yes, but barely. I turned the corner into the dining room. New centerpiece. A shallow clay bowl filled with polished stones and dried eucalyptus. Mom used to keep fresh flowers there. Always seasonal, always alive. In the kitchen, I opened the fridge out of habit. Almond milk, kombucha, a mason jar labeled cacao chia with a sticker that said treat yourself gently. Kristen, always Kristen. Then I noticed the calendar, a magnetic one on the fridge door, color-coded events written in 2 distinct handwriting styles. One was my mother's, neat cursive. The other was looser, loopier, Kristen's. She had her own color, and she had a standing block every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. labeled Wellness Room Reset. I stared at that phrase like it might explain something. Wellness room? We never had a wellness room. I walked down the hallway and turned left, toward the guest room that used to be full of old board games and spare pillows. The door was ajar. Inside, the space had transformed. A low futon rested against one wall, a salt lamp glowed from the corner, and the bookshelf had been replaced with floating white shelves holding crystals, tiny potted succulents, and a stack of yoga journals. There was a framed photo on the wall, Kristen in a canyon somewhere, arms raised toward the sun, with a quote underneath it that read, "Sacred silence is the loudest truth." My stomach tightened. There were no signs this room had ever belonged to our family. No remnants of sleepovers or holidays or board game nights. Just Kristen's curated aesthetic, arranged like a magazine spread. And then, from behind the closed closet door, a faint noise, a thud, a shift, movement. I froze. Every inch of me went still as I stepped toward the door and eased it open. Inside, tucked neatly in rows, were bins, labeled in Kristen's handwriting, ceremony supplies, retreat decor, event staging kits. There was also a white storage drawer unit labeled, client gifts, keep stocked. The realization crept over me in layers. This wasn't just a reset room, it was storage, office, studio, supply room. It was functional. I backed out slowly, heart drumming. By the time I reached the foyer again, the sunlight had shifted. I stood by the front door for a long moment, one hand on the knob, staring at the diffuser. That bottle, Clarity, still puffed sweet lavender and citrus into the air. Everything about Kristen was quiet, subtle, soft, but she didn't need to speak loudly to take up space. She just slipped in, and no one seemed to mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the whir and click of each rotation. My phone buzzed once. Kristen sending a voice note. "Thanks for grabbing the folder last week. Hope everything's feeling aligned for you lately." Aligned. That word again, always Kristen's favorite flavor of nothing. The next morning, I stopped by the house again. This time, unannounced but not uninvited. Dad had texted earlier. "Working from home today. Stop by if you want. Leftover chili in the fridge." I arrived late morning. He was at the dining table, laptop open, glasses on, muttering into a headset. I waited in the kitchen until he finished. He looked up, surprised but not displeased. "Hey, sweetheart, long time no see." "It's been 4 days," I said. He smiled. "That's long in parent years." We made small talk. I asked about his meetings. He asked about my job, vaguely. I microwaved the chili and stood at the counter while he typed something with quick, practiced fingers. When he closed the laptop, I leaned in. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," he said, sipping coffee. I hesitated. "Do you know Kristen's been using the guest room?" He didn't flinch, just gave a small shrug. "She's been helping your mom reorganize things." "That's not a guest room anymore." Dad sighed. "Look, Heather, it's not a big deal. Kristen just needs a quiet space sometimes. She has her own apartment." "Which isn't exactly restful right now," he replied. "She's juggling a lot. Clients, events, she's had a rough stretch." That word again, soft excuses for hard truths. "She's running a business out of your house." Dad stiffened just slightly. Then, in the same breath, "It's temporary." "What's temporary?" I pressed. She doesn't live here. But her mail comes here, her supplies are here, her schedule's on the fridge." "She's helping your mother with some wellness practices," he said, like reciting from a pamphlet. "It's been good for the energy." "The energy?" I echoed, nearly laughing. He met my eyes then, and something flickered, half guilt, half evasion. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You seem tense." "Because I walked into a different house," I said. "Because I'm watching my childhood get rearranged around someone who already left it behind." He didn't reply, just stood and began rinsing his coffee mug. I tried a different angle. "Remember when I accidentally locked myself out sophomore year and you drove across town just to bring the spare?" He chuckled softly. "Of course." "You kept the spare under the clay turtle by the porch, right?" He paused. "Yeah, why?" "Just wondering if Kristen remembered that too." He didn't answer, just dried his hands and started stacking the mail by the sink. One envelope slipped loose and landed on the floor. I bent down to grab it and froze. It was a lease form, not filled out, not signed. But on the top line, occupant name, Kristen Moore. I handed it back silently. He took it without meeting my eyes. The silence between us stretched. I should get back to work, he said. I nodded and left the room. As I walked out, I passed the hallway console table. On it sat a bowl I didn't recognize. Carved wood, smooth and dark. Inside were 3 keys. One was the house key. One was Kristen's car fob. The third was a tiny silver triangle. It looked like a key to a private lockbox. I didn't touch it, but I noted its presence the way you note a sudden draft. Subtle, cold, and entirely out of place. I couldn't get that lease form out of my head. Kristen's name, printed, neat font, empty signature line like a whisper that hadn't been spoken yet. I spent that night pacing my apartment, trying to remember every time Mom had said temporary. Every moment they called me steady. All those phrases that once felt like praise, suddenly they sounded like permission for her. Saturday morning, I drove to the house again. I didn't warn anyone, not because I needed confrontation, I needed proof. The driveway was empty, probably errands, yoga, farmer's market, something curated and serene. The front door was locked, but the key under the turtle? Still there. I let myself in. This time, I moved quickly, methodically. Hallway, kitchen, den, the diffuser still running, the scent shifting now, peppermint and cedarwood. I went upstairs. The guest room, wellness room looked exactly the same, except for a new addition on the nightstand, a velvet box. Inside were essential oil vials labeled with names like Awaken and Cleanse. Her handwriting again, little curls on every ez. I turned toward the office. It had always been Dad's space. Dark walnut shelves, his college diploma, the framed blueprints from his first architecture project. It was where he took calls, balanced accounts, stored records. I hadn't stepped inside in over a year. The room felt colder than I remembered, the lights dimmer. The shelf to the left of the desk used to house family photo albums. Our birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings, even Kristen's terrible middle school bangs. They were gone. In their place, stacked binders, all uniform, all labeled with pale gray tape. Client retainers. Monthly expense reports. KM Studio. KM Kristen Moore. I pulled one binder halfway out. It caught on something metal, a plaque. I crouched and slid it free. It was heavy, black marble base, gold script across the front. KM Studio, Mindful Interiors Division, presented in honor of expansion. The date was from 6 weeks ago. There was a photo attached. Kristen in front of a floral wall, ribbon-cutting scissors in hand, our parents on either side, smiling like it was her wedding day. I hadn't even known there was a ribbon. The deeper I went, the worse it got. The filing cabinet held tax folders. 3 names on the tab: Robert Moore, Elizabeth Moore, Kristen Moore. No mention of mine, anywhere. On Dad's desk, tucked inside a drawer, I found the old property file for the house. I remembered it from years back when he taught me about escrow and insurance as part of some impromptu life lesson. Now, a printed addendum sat on top. Home use agreement. Drafted, not signed, it named Kristen Moore as a co-residential facilitator for integrated lifestyle enhancements. I sat in his chair, suddenly nauseous. It wasn't just that Kristen was there. She was embedding herself, quietly, strategically. Like water soaking into drywall, you didn't see the damage until the wall collapsed. And no one said a word. Not even Dad, especially not Dad. As I placed everything back, I heard the click of the garage door. Then footsteps, light, unhurried. Kristen. I moved fast, back down the hall and toward the stairs. At the landing, I turned. She was there, halfway up, dressed in oatmeal linen, hair in a loose braid, holding a mason jar of something green. "Heather," she said, surprised. I didn't respond. Just met her eyes, then walked past. I didn't need to ask why she was there again. At this point, it would have been like asking a vine why it grows toward the light. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the waterfront instead, parked beside the empty boardwalk, and sat with the windows down, listening to the hollow clang of boat masts against the wind. My hands still smelled faintly like Kristen's diffuser oil. I hadn't even touched it, but somehow it clung. I wanted to scream, or laugh, or both. She had her own plaque, her own binders, her own color on the calendar, her name on tax files. And all I had was my key under the turtle, a drawer that still opened for now. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't sleep. Instead, I drafted a list. Every item I'd seen, every word I could recall from Mom or Dad or Kristen in the past 6 months that now sounded different. Less benign, more designed. By morning, I'd circled one phrase 3 times. It's been good for the energy. Energy. That's what they'd started calling Kristen's presence. Not visits, not projects. Energy. By Wednesday, I knew what I had to do. I waited until after sunset. Mom had invited me to dinner, just the three of us. She said she missed our core unit. Dad was grilling. Kristen was out of town, supposedly. I arrived right on time. Not a minute early, not a minute late. The house smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon. I brought nothing. Mom met me at the door, smiling. Dad was already in the backyard, grill smoking. We sat under the string lights Kristen had hung last fall. Small talk, polite chewing, casual nothingness. I didn't mention the binders, the lease draft, the framed plaque. Instead, I asked one question. So, is Kristen moving in? The air stilled, completely. Mom glanced at Dad. He kept slicing chicken, kept slicing and slicing. Well, Mom said slowly, she's just been spending more time here. That's not what I asked. Heather, don't make this into a thing. I'm not making it anything, I said. I just want to know. Dad put the knife down, not hard, but firm. She's helping us rethink some things, he said. What kinds of things? The silence that followed didn't last long, because from inside the house, through the open window, we heard it. Kristen's voice, not gone, not out of town. Just somewhere else in the house, speaking low into her phone. I froze. Mom froze? It's almost set, Kristen was saying. Just waiting for them to sign off? Honestly, I thought Heather would have fought it more, but she's always been too passive. My breath caught. She laughed then, soft, knowing. She doesn't see the shape of things, not until it's already been molded. I stood. Mom reached across the table quickly. Heather, wait! But I was already moving. I stepped inside. Her voice was clearer now, coming from Dad's office. I didn't slam the door open, just turned the knob and walked in. Kristen was sitting on the edge of Dad's chair, phone to her ear, laptop open beside her. The screen showed floor plans, not digital renderings, real layouts, familiar corners, the house. She looked up and stilled mid-sentence. Oh, she said. Her face went still. I didn't speak, just stared. I waited for her to explain why she was there, why she lied, why she was in the office I was never allowed to touch without asking first, but she didn't. She just reached forward, clicked the laptop shut, and smiled. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just heard my own name pass between her teeth like a formality. She smiled at me like nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just overheard her dismantle my name into a placeholder. I stood in the doorway, the silence between us swelling thick as syrup. Kristen didn't reach for her phone again. She didn't explain, she didn't apologize. She just crossed one leg over the other and said lightly, "Did you need something?" I almost laughed. "Funny," I said, stepping into the office. "I was about to ask you the same thing." She didn't flinch, just tilted her head like I was the one who was confused. "I think you're blowing something out of proportion," she said. "This isn't what you think." "You're right," I said, crossing to the desk. "It's worse." Her laptop was still warm beneath my fingers, even closed. The silver lid bore a faint fingerprint swirl, hers. I looked at the plaque on the shelf, the ribbon-cutting photo. Dad's signature under her studio's expansion grant, dated 2 weeks ago. "You've been here every day," I said, "not just visiting, not just resetting. You've been planning something behind our backs." Kristen stood slowly. "Behind whose back, Heather?" That stopped me. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't deny it, she just held my gaze. And in that silence, I realized something. She wasn't hiding this from our parents. She was hiding it from me. "Have you even been living in your apartment?" I asked. She shrugged. "It's still mine, but I work better here." "Because of the energy," I said flatly. Kristen smiled again, like she'd won something. "I know you think this is dramatic," she said, brushing past me on her way to the door. "But change doesn't have to be hostile. It can be graceful, quiet, mutual. Except no one told me. No one had to." She left the office without another word, and I stood there alone. The drawers, the shelves, the desk, they weren't mine, they were hers now. But there was one thing she hadn't touched. Dad's old file box in the far cabinet, the one with the clasp that always stuck, the one labeled Archives. It took effort, but I pulled it free. Inside, dusty folders, receipts, old property records, and near the back, something newer, thicker paper, fresh ink, architectural plans, not for a studio, not for a retreat space, for a renovation. A floor-by-floor redesign of the house. complete with layout shifts, wall demolitions, interior buildouts, and on the top sheet, proposal for structural realignment, prepared for Kristen Moore, co-occupant. My heart pounded. There were signatures, drafted, not finalized, but Mom's initials were in the margin. Dad's too, no mention of me, not even a footnote. I flipped through the pages. Office rebranded as meditation hub, living room converted to client integration zone, old playroom marked for demolition. My old bedroom, gone, walls pushed back, closet removed, absorbed into Kristen's expansion. It was all there, planned, drawn, expected. I returned everything where I found it and backed out of the room carefully. In the hallway mirror, my face looked unfamiliar. Not angry, not broken, just erased. Exactly the way Kristen had designed it. I didn't go home. Not really. I sat in my car for 40 minutes. The renovation blueprints burned into my memory. I couldn't stop seeing the shape of my childhood bedroom erased with one sweep of Kristen's pen. My closet transformed into storage for sound bath instruments. I thought about everything I hadn't said. Every time I'd bitten my tongue, smiled politely, stayed grounded. And what did it get me? A future I didn't exist in. That Sunday, we were expected at Aunt Lily's birthday brunch. One of those outdoor spreads with decorative lemon slices floating in glass jugs and handwritten name cards tucked into rosemary sprigs. I hadn't planned on going, but now I couldn't afford not to. I arrived early, earlier than anyone. The restaurant's private garden was already half set, tables dressed in soft linen, a cake tower glinting under glass. I slipped past the servers and found the host, told him I was helping organize seating. Said I needed to adjust the layout before guests arrived. My voice was steady. He handed me the chart without question. By the time Kristen arrived in her sage green wrap dress and woven heels, the place cards had already been rearranged. I watched her scan the table. Her smile wavered. She looked for her usual seat, centered, close to Dad. It wasn't there. She was at the far end now, beside Aunt Lily's second husband's cousin, a man known for chewing with his mouth open and quoting movie trivia no one asked for. My spot, smack center, right beside Dad, across from Mom. I poured myself iced tea and waited. They filtered in slowly, uncles, cousins, neighbors, laughter, hugs, air kisses, and then Kristen approached. "Hey," she said, a slight edge under her tone. "I think there's a mistake. I'm supposed to be next to Dad." "Table's set," I replied coolly. "They asked me to finalize it." Her smile strained. "Oh, well, maybe we can—" "Let's not," I said. Something flickered across her face then. Recognition. Not fear, not yet. But she saw the shift. I wasn't the steady one anymore. During brunch, I kept the conversation light, asked Dad about his garden, complimented Mom's blouse, laughed with Aunt Lily about her retirement plans that included starting a podcast, and I watched Kristen stew in her smile. She was too proud to make a scene. Too practiced, but her rhythm was off, her charm misfiring. By dessert, people were commenting. "You've been so quiet, Kristen. You feeling okay?" Mom gave me a look, measured, cautious. She saw it too. After cake, Dad walked me to the parking lot. "Good to see you today," he said. "You look more sure of yourself." "I am," I said. He hesitated, then, "About the house. Kristen's just helping. You know that, right?" I didn't respond. Instead, I asked, "Do you remember the wallpaper in my old room?" He blinked. "Of course." "Lavender vines," I said. "You and I put it up together, took 6 hours. You said it was crooked, but perfect." A soft smile pulled at his mouth. "She's planning to knock that wall out," I said. The smile vanished. I saw the designs. He didn't deny it, didn't explain, just exhaled slowly, like something too heavy had been hanging from his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "She said it would be temporary." "She said a lot of things." Dad looked away. I left before he could answer, because for the first time, I didn't need one. I drove home with the windows down, even though the wind tangled my hair and stung my eyes. That crooked wallpaper memory stayed with me. Lavender vines, imperfect, beautiful, ours. Kristen didn't know what it took to put that wall up. She only saw what it would look like down. But I remembered, and I knew now, memory wasn't enough. I needed something heavier, something Kristen couldn't rearrange with a soft voice and a sage diffuser. So I called in a favor. Years ago during grad school, I worked part-time for a small accounting firm. Nothing fancy, local businesses, some estate planning. One of the partners, Jay, had always liked me. Said I had quiet tenacity. I reached out, asked if we could meet, told him it was personal. We sat in a booth at a downtown cafe, no frills. Just 2 mugs of coffee and my voice, low but steady. I need help understanding how someone can redesign a home they don't own, I said. Jay leaned back. Well, depends. Is she on the deed? No. Is she paying into the mortgage? No. Contributing to renovation financing? I hesitated. Maybe. That's what I need to find out. He nodded slowly. I handed him a name and an LLC I'd seen in one of Kristen's binders, KM Interior Expansion Collective. I think she's using it to anchor herself into the property, I added. But I need proof. Jay tapped his pen thoughtfully. I'll see what I can pull. 3 days later, he called me back. Found something, he said. Actually, I found a lot. We met again, this time at his office, away from any cafe years. She applied for a small business grant last year, he said. Cited her parents' residence as her project site. That's unusual. Most applicants use leased commercial property. But the board approved it, barely. He slid a printout across the desk. Under project scope, renovation and expansion of wellness design headquarters located in a multi-use residential space, authorized by partial state contributors. I pointed to the line. Who are the contributors? Jay tapped a name. Heather Moore. My blood went cold. That's you, right? He asked. Yes, he flipped the page. Turns out she used your name to show multifamily equity stability. It made the proposal look more grounded. She cited joint family investment. I never signed anything, I whispered. You didn't have to, Jay said. She listed you under supporting equity tenant. Probably pulled old tax docs. Maybe used a utility bill in your name. The rage came in slow waves, not hot, but cold. Clean, focused. Can this be challenged? He nodded. If you didn't authorize it, absolutely, especially if it helped her secure funding. I sat back, exhaling hard. Kristen hadn't erased me. She'd used me, folded my name into her foundation like insulation, silent, necessary, hidden. And now I had something she couldn't quote around. On the way home, I stopped by the house. No one was home. I didn't need to go inside. I just stood at the foot of the driveway and looked at it. Every stone I used to jump over barefoot, the cracked tile by the porch that Dad never fixed, the curtain Mom sewed by hand one summer. It wasn't hers, not yet, but it almost had been. And now it was mine to unravel. I made the call the next morning, not to Kristen, not to my parents, to the grant board office listed on the KM Collective approval sheet, the one Jay had highlighted in yellow. I told the woman on the line I was calling to dispute the use of my name in a public funding document. That I never authorized it, that I wanted a full investigation. She didn't ask why, she didn't have to. Once I gave her the application ID, her tone changed. Thank you for coming forward, she said. We'll begin our internal audit today. You may be contacted for a formal statement. I gave them my number, my address, told them to send me everything. When I hung up, my hand didn't even shake. For the first time in months, I felt something sharp click into place. By noon, I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, Kristen texted, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. That night, Mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, jacket still buttoned, mascara slightly smudged. "Heather," she said, "we need to talk." I stepped aside. She walked in and sat, uninvited, on the edge of my couch like she had a right to still be comfortable in my space. "I don't know what you did," she started, "but Kristen's grant is under review. They called the house. They're freezing funds." "I know," I said. Mom blinked. You knew?" "I reported her." The words dropped into the air like coins into a well. "You reported your sister?" "She used my name. She forged association. That's fraud. She didn't forge, she just assumed you'd support her. She assumed wrong." Mom stood up fast, as if the hype might give her the upper hand again. It didn't. "Heather, this affects everything, the renovations, the expansion, the wellness center. None of that was mine to begin with," I said. "You already made that clear." She stared at me then, really stared, and for the first time in my adult life, I watched her realize she couldn't talk me down. "Do you have any idea what this will do to her reputation?" she snapped. I almost laughed. She was willing to erase mine to build hers. "She's your sister." "No, she's your project." That hit harder than I expected. I saw it land in her shoulders, her throat. She didn't deny it, just gathered her coat slowly, with effort. Before she left, she turned to me. I always thought you were the one who didn't need anything, she said, that you'd be okay no matter what. I was, I said, until you decided that made me invisible. She didn't respond. The door clicked shut behind her. The next morning, Kristen called. I let it ring, and when it rang again, I picked up. Heather, she said, breath tight, we need to fix this. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said, just things to undo. I didn't think you'd go this far. You never thought I'd go anywhere. She was silent for a long beat. Then quietly, you're not the only one who can make a phone call. That was the closest she'd come to a threat. I smiled. Then make it, I said. But be careful, you built everything on my name. I didn't wait for Kristen to follow through on her threat. I made another call, this time to the neighborhood association. The house was still under its original zoning classification, which strictly prohibited commercial operation within private residence limits. KM Studios renovations, particularly the client integration zones and meditation hub, were in direct violation. I forwarded the architectural plans, the file Jay had shown me, the one with Dad's initials. The zoning board said they'd investigate immediately. A report would be filed. An officer would visit the home within the week. Within 48 hours, everything started to slide. Kristen posted a vague message on her social profile. Sometimes growth requires stillness. Taking time to reset intentions. We'll be pausing operations this month. More soon. I almost laughed. She was resetting all right, just not by choice. By Thursday, I received a voicemail from the grant board auditor. Formal language, legal tone. They had identified significant inconsistencies in project representation and occupancy documentation. Translation, she lied, and they caught it. They were requesting a formal statement from me. I scheduled it for Friday. That same afternoon, I got a text from Dad. Can we meet? Alone. We sat in the courtyard of the law office where he'd helped Mom draft their first will years ago. He looked older than I remembered. Not tired, just worn at the edges. I didn't know she used your name like that, he said. She told you everything else. He winced. I thought we were helping her, that it was temporary, just structure until she stabilized. She was never building something temporary. He nodded slowly. I see that now. There was a long pause. Then softly he added, you should have said something earlier. I felt my jaw tighten. I did, for years. You just called it being dramatic. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. This was supposed to be part of your mother's and my trust restructure, he said, but I want you to see it. Inside, a draft, revisions to the family trust, redistribution of shared property assets. Kristen's name was on the proposed new deed. Mine was not. I didn't sign it, he said quickly, and after what's happened, I won't. I stared at the document, then back at him. Why was it even considered? He looked away. Your mother believes Kristen needs more support, and I don't? You always seemed okay. That word again, okay, used like a compliment, meant like a dismissal. She used me, I said. You helped her do it. He flinched. I know. I stood. Then fix it. I will. He reached into the folder again. One last page, handwritten, his own notes. Will revision draft include both daughters equally or dissolve house into shared estate for future distribution? I took it. For now, that was enough. Later that night, I walked the neighborhood, past the house, lights off, Kristen's car gone. For once, the porch was dark. No diffuser scent spilled into the air. It was still. Not peaceful, not yet, but still. Like the breath before a deeper one. The audit office was quiet, no ticking clocks, no distant phones, just the hum of a ceiling vent and the steady rhythm of my own breath. I sat across from two officials. One took notes by hand, the other typed slowly, precisely. My palms didn't sweat, my voice didn't shake. Because this wasn't revenge, this was record correction. They asked me to confirm my identity, my relationship to Kristen, my awareness of the business documents in question. I answered everything directly. Yes, that's my legal name. No, I was never informed. Yes, I have documented evidence she used my name to anchor a funding application. No, I did not give permission. They didn't interrupt. They didn't question tone, only details. Then came the final question. Can you describe how this misrepresentation has impacted you personally? I looked up from my hands and said, "She used me like wallpaper, quiet, decorative, familiar, something she could peel off and replace when it didn't match her aesthetic anymore." Neither official moved. I gave to this family for years. I paid off student loans without asking for help. I paid my parents' insurance during the recession. I drove home to take care of mom when she had surgery. I never asked for credit. I thought being reliable was enough. I leaned forward slightly, but when it came time to build something permanent, I wasn't part of it. I was treated like furniture. The woman writing finally nodded. Just once. Enough. The session ended. I walked out into the sunshine with my heels clicking harder than when I arrived. At the corner of the plaza, someone was waiting. Kristen, turtleneck, smooth hair, sunglasses that didn't hide the tension in her jaw. "You really went through with it," she said. "You gave me no choice. You could have come to me." "I did. You ignored it." She folded her arms. "You know what you've done, right? They're pulling all my accounts. Every contract I've signed is under review. You built it on lies." Her mouth opened, closed. She searched for the calm tone she always used, the soft middle ground. But there wasn't one anymore. "You're going to ruin everything," she whispered. "No," I said. "You already did. I'm just pulling the curtains back." Kristen stepped closer. "Do you really think Mom and Dad will forgive this?" "They don't need to. I didn't do it for them." That stunned her. Just long enough for me to say one last thing. "You spent so long curating your life to look effortless, Kristen. But it was never effort, it was erasure. And the person you erased was me." I walked away, didn't look back. At home, I opened my laptop and began writing. Not emails, not legal responses. My story. What I'd allowed, what I'd mistaken for love, what I refused to tolerate anymore. I wasn't a secondary character in Kristen's curated narrative. I was the author of my own. The phone buzzed once. "Dad, a message. We need to meet. Mom and I have something to show you." I stared at it, heart calm. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what they might say. Because now, they had to listen. I parked 2 houses down, like I used to in high school when I missed curfew and didn't want the porch light to wake up the neighborhood. The street looked the same, but nothing about the house felt familiar anymore. Still, I went in through the front, no key under the turtle. This time, Dad opened the door. He looked at me the way people look at someone who's changed without warning. A little cautious, a little hopeful, like maybe you won't make them explain themselves. I stepped inside. The diffuser wasn't running. No soft spa music, no lemon balm in the air, just silence. Mom stood in the dining room. She wasn't wearing one of Kristen's soft wrap cardigans. Just jeans and an old college sweatshirt I hadn't seen in years. It made me pause. "We asked you here," Dad began, "because we owe you more than an apology." I didn't sit. "Then don't start with one," I said. "Start with the truth." Mom stepped forward. Her hands were empty, fingers nervously twisting. "I knew Kristen was using your name," she said, voice low. I blinked. Dad looked over, startled. "She told me after the grant was approved," Mom continued. "Said it was a small detail, said you'd be proud of her once it was done." I waited. I didn't stop her. I told myself it was harmless, that you wouldn't mind. "Because I never say no?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "Because I was used to you not needing us." I laughed, but it wasn't kind. "That's not love, Mom. That's convenience." "We were wrong," Dad said. I turned to him. "That's not enough." He nodded. "We've redrafted everything. The deed, the trust, you're on it. Equal share, no conditions, no interpretations." He handed me a folder. Legal paper, notarized, not a proposal, not a maybe. Signed. "We also spoke to the board," he added. "They're freezing Kristen's application indefinitely. The zoning committee sent a cease and desist for the renovations." Mom looked down. "She moved out 2 days ago," she said. I didn't react. "She's staying at a friend's," Dad added. "Her things are gone." I walked to the archway leading to the hallway. The console table was bare. No crystal bowl, no stacked keys, no scent of bergamot or sage, just wood and space. "She said you wouldn't come back," Mom said behind me, "that you'd rather burn everything than be part of it again." "She's wrong," I said. "I'm not here to burn it." I turned around. "I'm here to decide what stays." Dad nodded. "We want that, we do." A long silence. Then Mom stepped closer. "I didn't know how much I needed you until you disappeared," she said. "I didn't disappear," I said. "You just stopped seeing me." This time, she didn't deny it. We stood in the center of that house, once a home, and for the first time in years, there was no performance, no staging, no script, only reckoning, and space for something new. The hallway still creaked in the same places. Third plank after the banister, soft spot by the linen closet, the rhythm hadn't changed, only I had. I walked toward my old bedroom without a word. Mom and Dad didn't follow. The door was half open. The paint had been redone, a shade lighter, but the handle was the same, slightly loose, cool to the touch. Inside, the room was empty. No desk, no bed, no bookshelves, just light filtering through gauzy white curtains and a faint outline on the wall where my bulletin board used to hang. And the lavender wallpaper, faded but still intact, climbing vines in soft lilac, trailing like memory. I touched the corner where I'd once helped Dad line it up. It was still crooked, still perfect. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, right where my bed used to be. My knees almost touched the baseboard heater. This was where I used to dream. Scheme, cry, laugh, rewrite school essays 3 times until the words felt like mine. This was where I learned silence didn't protect you. It erased you. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small box I'd brought. Inside was a roll of painter's tape, a black marker, and a photo. Me and Dad on the day we hung the wallpaper. I was wearing an oversized hoodie, he was holding the level wrong, and we were both laughing. I taped it to the wall. Then beneath it, I wrote, "Nothing worth building should begin with a lie." I stood. One final thing left. I went to the closet. The one Kristen had planned to remove entirely. It was still intact, but empty. Dust in the corners, a single forgotten hook overhead. I took off my coat and hung it. Not because I was staying, because I wanted it known. I'd been here, and not quietly. I walked back downstairs. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad was leaning on the island like the conversation upstairs echoed through the floors. "I left something," I said. Neither asked what. They didn't need to. I turned to the front door. Mom stopped me gently. "Heather," I paused. "Will you come back?" "I don't know," I said, "but you'll never wonder where I stand again." She nodded, and I left. That night, I drove out past the edge of town, past the little lake where Dad once taught me to skip stones. I stopped at the overlook and stepped out. The air was cold, but clear. I closed my eyes and let the wind move through me. Not take anything, just remind me I was still here. Still Heather, not the quiet one, not the helper, not the placeholder, just me. And that was enough. A year passed, not quickly, not cleanly, but with movement. I didn't go back to the house that winter, not when Kristen's grant was formally revoked. Not when the zoning board posted the violation notice on the front porch. Not even when Mom reached out on my birthday and left a voicemail with tears tucked behind every word. I needed the time to remember who I was when no one was watching, to build a space that didn't depend on permission. I found a new rhythm, a small studio apartment 3 towns over, warm and square and mine. I painted the walls myself, crooked on purpose, lavender vines on one, just one. Not as a replica, as a reminder. Spring came, then summer, and one crisp fall morning, a letter arrived. Not from Kristen, not from Mom, from Dad. No return address, just my name, careful and slow. Inside, 1 page. "We've started repairs, nothing fancy, no additions, just rebuilding what matters. Your room is still yours, the wallpaper stays. I told her if she ever tries to take it down, she'll have to answer to me first." He'd signed it, "Love always, D." There was no pressure, no plea, no guilt, just presence. 2 weeks later, I drove out, not to visit, not to stay, just to pass by. But when I reached the street, I parked again. Not 2 houses down, directly in front. The house looked smaller now, or maybe I looked larger. The porch was bare, no bowls of crystals, no hanging lights, just clean lines, stillness. I walked up the path. The front door was painted again, same color as before, but the handle was new, brushed bronze, solid. I didn't knock, I didn't have to, because I wasn't going in. I reached into my bag and pulled out a frame. Inside, a photo of the room as it was. Curtains drawn, sunbeam hitting the corner, my coat still hanging in the closet. And beneath it, I'd written, "You can't erase what remembers itself." I set the frame gently in the mailbox. No note, no signature, then turned. On the way back to the car, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't wonder what Kristen would say if she saw it, because it wasn't for her. It wasn't for them. It was for the house. For the wall. For the girl who used to stand inside it wondering what she needed to be in order to be kept. Now I knew. Nothing. I needed to be nothing but me, and I was. 15 steps down the walkway, one clean breath, and gone. No apology, no warning, just presence, finally seen.